Shabbat Shalom. It's so wonderful to see all of you tonight, and I'm just so grateful to be here with my family, my husband and my son. For those who don't know me, I'm your new cantor. Just moved here in early July. My name is Cantor Sharon Brown-Levy, and I welcome each and every one of you here. We're also so delighted tonight as the rabbi continues on his family leave with his newborn baby. I'm here representing Congregation Colony. We also have one of our outstanding members, Don Strasberg, and his family here tonight. He will be delivering our Devar this evening. So we're really grateful. We're grateful to every single one of you for being here and to all of our professional staff and volunteers that make such beautiful services like this possible. So we want to talk about what a wonderful thing it is for people to be together on Shabbat, and we can start on page 128 with the singing of Hine Ma Tov. How good and how pleasant it is for us all to be together. Hine Ma Tov Umanayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Ma Tov Umanayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Ma Tov Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Ma Tov Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Ma Tov Umanayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Ma Tov Umanayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. How good and how pleasant it is for us all to be together. And before we continue on welcoming Shabbat with our beautiful melodies of Kabbalat Shabbat, I would love to invite Don and his wife up, if it's okay, to come and light our Shabbat candles this evening. Would you do us the honor of lighting some Shabbat candles? It would be so wonderful to have you. You can find the blessing for the Shabbat candles on page 120. Do you want to just say the blessing and I'll sing it then? Yeah, that's right. Go ahead. If you need it, yeah, go ahead. Amen. Please join in the singing of the candle blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik shel Shabbat. And we all say, Amen. We continue on with our wonderful music to help us welcome Shabbat together. Let's look at the bottom of page 129. We say, when I keep the Shabbat, God watches over me. It is a sign between God and me forever. From the Sephardic tradition, Ki Eshmerah Shabbat, Ki Eshmerah Shabbat, En Ishmerehi, Ki Eshmerah Shabbat, En Ishmerehi, Oti Le'olameyat, Beino Uveini, Oti Le'olameyat, Beino Uveini. Sing with me. Ki Eshmerah Shabbat. There's a wonderful drash that there are angels that are protecting us and watching over us all week long, and that guide us and protect us as we come and go, especially on Shabbat. And so what I'd love for you to do is join in the singing of Shalom Aleichem, which reflects these guards, these watchmen of us, all week long and especially on Shabbat. Page 142, we join in the singing of the traditional rendition of Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Imelech, Malachi Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lachem l'shalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon, Imelech, Malachi Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon, Imelech, Malachi Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzetem l'shalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon, Imelech, Malachi Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so in the Kabbalistic tradition, we are reminded of the joy of Shabbat. Many people around the world choose to wear white as they welcome in and celebrate the symbol of the bride, as Israel is the bride meeting the groom at our people, a creation, celebrating the joy of creation. In the Mystics of Sfat, we continue with the beautiful Lecha Dodi found on page 138. I hope you enjoy this melody that I very much enjoy. It actually comes from Morocco. A wonderful chazan who spent a lot of his time in Canada and now travels the world playing many instruments. This original Lecha Dodi comes from my colleague Chazan Aharon Ben Shushan. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Lecha Dodi Likarat Kala Pnei Shabbat Nekavela Lecha Dodi Likarat Kala Pnei Shabbat Nekavela Shamor V'Zachor B'Dibur Echad Yishmi'anu El HaMiyuchad Adonai Echad U'Shema Echad L'Shem U'Tiferet Eliki. Sing with me. Lecha Dodi Likarat Kala Pnei Shabbat Nekavela Lecha Dodi Likarat Kala Pnei Shabbat Nekavela Likarat Shabbat Lechu v'nelcha Ki mekor Haveracha Merosh mikedem Nesucha Sof ha'ma'aseh v'machashavot. Sing with me now. Lecha Dodi Likarat Kala Pnei Shabbat Nekavela Lecha Dodi Likarat Kala Pnei Shabbat Nekavela. La 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 ya la 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 la. together. Lecha dodi likeret kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likeret kala penei Shabbat. We rise symbolically and face the door as a congregation as we symbolically greet the Shabbat bride entering to wed with God and the people of Israel. Verse 9. Ba'i v'shalom ateret ba'ala gam b'simcha u'v'tzohala toch emuneh am segula ba'i chala lecha dodi likeret kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likeret kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la. And the bride has entered, and we continue as we introduce the next section of our service with the words that magnify God's name. B'chatzi Kaddish, page 144. Yitgadal ve'yitkadash shnei rabba v'yalmad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich machotei v'chayechon uvyom ובחייך בית ישראל בעגלה בעגלה ובזמן קריב במהרו יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלל שמי דקודשה לעילה מן כברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמא ואימרו. Please, I invite you to rise for the Baruch Hu, the call to worship. Rise for page 146. Ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la la. La 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed Baruch 148. We continue. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, bechokma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umsader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, וחושך מפני אור, ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה. אדוני צבאות שמו, ולחי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו, לעולם ועד. Together, ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב And we continue with the wonderful theme of God's love. You may be seated at this time. So we just came through 3 weeks, 3 very kind of challenging weeks. For those who don't know, we just completed, of course, the season, kind of a season of mourning that led up to the most solemn day of the year, which was Tisha B'Av. And so this Shabbat, after 3 weeks of sadness and desolation, we have 7 straight weeks of comfort. And this is the very first Shabbat of comfort, which has its own Hebrew name. It's actually a special title today. It's called Shabbat Nachamu, right? Nachamu. Maybe you've heard of the name Nechama in Hebrew. It comes from the word for comfort. And that's exactly what we're doing. All the next 7 weeks and leading into Rosh Hashanah, we're thinking, we're looking introspectively, but we're looking with love and with hope and with consolation. The first Shabbat of consolation. And not only that, starting as the stars come into the sky tonight and tomorrow, we have yet another little-known holiday called Tu B'Av. Now, you might have heard of Tu B'Shvat, right? The holiday for the trees. This is Tu B'Av, which is actually a day that celebrates God's love. I mean, so many neat things are happening on Tu B'Av, which I can tell more about tomorrow. You get to hear tomorrow as I lead services then. But the reason I go into this theme of love is because the theme of love is prevalent, not only in all our services, but especially at Shabbat. So Ahavat Olam, you will see, discusses exactly that, everlasting love you offered your people Israel through your Torah and your mitzvot. So if you are familiar with the beautiful Friedman setting of Ahavat Olam, please join me on page 150 in honor of Shabbat and in honor of Tu B'Av and this wonderful, hopeful period of consolation. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Avta, Amcha Avta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochareinu, uvkumeinu nasiach b'chulkecha, v'nismach b'divrei toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed, ki hem chayenu, v'yorech yameinu, u'vahem nege yomam v'layla, nege yomam v'layla. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהי עמו ישראל, אלוהי עמו ישראל. Continue on the next page. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto. We continue on 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת. One of my favorite things about this Siddur, Mishkan Tfilah, is it has so many really beautiful English interpretations of the Tefillot that you see. Usually on the page that the Hebrew exists on, you'll see as close as to a traditional or verbatim translation as you can of the prayer Emet, which is the prayer that constitutes God's truth. So first we declare God's oneness with Shema, and then we declare our love for God, V'ahavta, very in keeping with the theme of Ahava, of love, on Tu B'Av. And now we come with the theme of truth, because in order for us to become free, we have to believe and to trust that all God gave us was true, right? We were maybe not necessarily physically there at the parting of the sea, but did you know that every single day, 365 days of the year, if we were to pray in a prayer service, a worship service, the mention of truth and the mention of the parting of the sea is a daily part of our existence as a Jewish people. And it's even more clearly demarcated at Shabbat, because we like to quote Torah, and so Michamocha is actually a quote from Torah, just as V'ahavta is, and much of our liturgy. So what I would love to do is take a little departure from the traditional translation, and I'd like for you to read for me on the top of page 157, this nice translation, Standing on the Parted Shores. Let's read together. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. And so there are so many beautiful settings of Michamocha. This is one that I happen to love very much, because I believe that if you're not really certain about the words, even the great Hasidic master, the Baal Shem Tov, said, it's okay to just yai lai lai, and your words are still going to reach God, no matter what. So we're going to begin with this nigun, this melody that has no words, and then we're going to go into the text. Page 158. Yai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai. Now we do the text. Mi chanocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chanocha nenar b'kodesh, nora tehilot oseh pelech, nora tehilot oseh pelech. Na'lechutecha ra'u banecha, anu ve'ameru. Sing with me, Adonai imeno le'olam le'olam va'ed. Adonai imeno le'olam le'olam va'ed. And now the nigun, join in. Yai la la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la la, yai la 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 la. Ve'ne'emar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov, u'ge'alo miyad chazak mimenu. Together, Baruch Ata Adonai Gad Yisrael. Taking a deep breath, we think about the importance of being sheltered, especially in this critical time in our world's existence. So let's read together the beautiful alternate translation of Hashkivenu, page 161 at the bottom. And when we get to the end, in the Hebrew, it's called the Chatima, the ending. I'm going to teach you this beautiful melody that was taught by one of my very first mentors and friends, Chazan Shimon Gewurtz. So let's speak together the English. Give us a place. Here we go. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporetz sukat shalom aleinu. Haporetz sukat shalom aleinu. Yalko amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. This Vishamru, also not as common, but just exquisitely beautiful, is another gem of the late Debbie Friedman. And it's actually a true reflection of the words of Torah. They come right out of the book of Exodus, by the way, the words of Vishamru, that tell us we must keep the Shabbat. Observing Shabbat through the ages is a covenant for all time. So every Shabbat we remember not just the departure, but the importance of observing and keeping Shabbat. So in this meditative feel, I hope you will get to know the melody and join in this beautiful, calming Vishamru. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat לדורותם בריתם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום Ashvi Shat La'inafash. We sing Beini. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael. Oti le'olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael. Oti le'olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz uvayom hashvi Shabbat Amen, amen. May we be rested and may we be refreshed on this Shabbat. The next part of our service is, some people call it in certain traditions, the Amidah, which literally means the standing section. And in the Reformed tradition, it's called Tefillah, or quite simply, the prayer. Whatever your tradition, I invite you, if you are so inclined, please to rise for this section of our service as we say our private and then communal prayers to Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, U'mevii Gehula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo V'Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, V'Ezrat Sarah, page 168. Ata Gibor Leolam Adonai, Michaye Hakol Ata, Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Hakol Berahamim Rabim, Somech Noflim, Virofech Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Ishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Givurot, Umidam Melach, Melech Memid, Umechayeh, Umatmiach Yeshua, 170. Ata kadosh, v'shimcha kadosh, u'kidoshim b'chol yom, yehalelucha selah. Baruch ata Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Let's say the translation together on that page. You are holy. Your name is holy. And those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. You may continue at your leisure in the language of your choosing through the rest of this Amidah Tefillah, beginning on page 170 and concluding with the prayer for peace on page 180. You may be seated when you are finished. Grant abundant peace to Israel, your people, forever. For you are the sovereign God of all peace. May it be pleasing to you, Adonai, to bless your people Israel and all the peoples of the earth in every season and every moment with your peace. Please join, if you know this, on 178. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Ki atam melech adom lecha shalom. Ki atam melech adom lecha shalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim is now the time in our service that we are thinking very, very much of those who are in need of healing. God knows that in this pandemic, the world needs so much healing, and continues to. But in our Siddur, you find a most outstanding prayer that has really revolutionized how the Reform world of Judaism sees our need to pray for healing. And it was Debbie Friedman who created this universal peace for healing. What I'd like to do before we sing that is I'm going to read the list for those at this week of Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of comfort, the Shabbat of Deuteronomy Va'etchanan, but most importantly, a Shabbat where we need to find that shelter, that inner peace, that sense of being guarded and wrapped in God's sheltering arms. We're thinking of, in both Hebrew and English today, the following members of our community: Avraham Shlomo ben Yochanan v'Simcha, Elchanan Yitzchak ben Shimshon Pinchas, Eliza bat Orli, Esther bat Malka, Gittel Leah bat Masha Chana, Menachem Mendel ben Toba, Michael ben Manya, Rivka bat Mordechai, Shaul Mordechai ben Chana, Yisrael Isser ben Moshe, Yitzchak ben Etalea, Yoshua David ben Shaul Mordechai Vester. And in English, we're thinking of today Mona Asher, Laureen Barry, Marcia Bronsky, Denise Dobling, David Dowsett, Theo Dowsett, Evelyn Edwards, Charles Frost, Will Goldman, Scott Hacking, Sharon Hobbs, Susan Hom, Sandy Kahn, Sharon Katz, Rabbi Dov Lerner, Megan Magleby, Jamie Manson, Tyler Matthews, Janet Morley, Tom Nelson, Sherry Pedersen, Cynthia Pepper, Gerald Rosen. The list continues. Luke Rosen, Philip Rosenberg, Ina Sable, Penny Spector, Angela Stephanie, Linda Stern, Lauren Weiss, Judy Wolf, Vanessa Zealot. And as I bring my hand in your direction, please feel free to say aloud someone who you're thinking of. We wish for each and every one of these people Rifuat HaNefesh, the healing of the soul, Rifuat HaGuf, the healing of the body. On behalf of those who are mentioned today and those mentioned only within our hearts, we continue with the beautiful setting of Misha Berach on page 371. Please join in as all the text is there. The source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, Amen. It is my great pleasure and honor to bring up Professor Don Strasberg to come and share his words with us tonight. Enjoy this radio.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'd first like to express my appreciation for Rabbi Spector and to Rabbi Emeritus Wenger for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts on this week's Torah portion. I'll admit that while I have lectured many, many times over my 43 years as a professor at the U, I have not done so without PowerPoints in a very long time. So we'll just all have to see how well that goes. The title of this week's Parsha, Va'et Chanan, is Hebrew for I pleaded. It's also the first work of the Parsha. In it, Moses is in a humbling place, asking God to let him enter the land of Israel. But there's also a lot more going on here. In fact, according to some, if we had to choose only one Torah portion to summarize the entire Torah, we'd have to consider Parshat Chanan a strong contender because in it we find a compilation of the Torah's greatest hits, both in law and narrative. In this portion, Moses orders the children of Israel to pay attention and follow the laws given by God in order to be worthy of the land that they are about to receive. Here too, Moses speaks the words of the Shema, the watchword of our faith, and commands Israel to show their love for Adonai and to keep God's laws and ordinances. Of greatest relevance, though, for my brief talk tonight, is that in this parsha, the 10 Commandments are recalled, and for the first time are actually referred to as the 10 sayings, Seret HaDvarim, and the people are exhorted to heed God's commandments. Of course, I don't think God ever meant for these 10 Commandments to cover all the ways in which Jewish people were expected to live. And we certainly know that there are hundreds of other admonitions throughout the Torah and elsewhere. Perhaps we should think of the 10 Commandments as the minimal requirements for us as individuals and for together as a people. On the other hand, some of our prophets have even suggested that 10 Commandments may have been more than we really needed. The prophet Micah taught that the Torah was built on just 3 commandments: do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Rabbi Akiba taught that the great rule of Torah is actually not on the tablets at all, but stated in the command found in Leviticus 19, love your neighbor as yourself. And Rabbi Hillel famously summarized the Torah when he taught a convert, what is hateful to you, do not do unto others. The rest is commentary, go and learn. One particularly important aspect of Va'et Chanan is that it reinforces the idea of our own free will. While we cannot always control our circumstances, we're responsible for the ethical and spiritual choices that we make. Neither God nor Moses would have needed to warn us to keep the covenant and remember the commandments had our compliance been foreordained. If we had no agency to murder, to steal, to bear false witness, we wouldn't need the 10 Commandments injunction not to do those things. Va'et Chanan reminds us that we all must be involved in translating the wisdom of our sacred texts to our contemporary lives, if they are to have any impact. More on this a little later. So, back to the 10 Commandments. I don't know how many of you remember Mel Brooks's movie, The History of the World Part 2. But in this movie, there's a scene where Mel, playing Moses, come down from the mountain. He's carrying 3 tablets. He proclaims to the people that the Lord God has given unto you these 15, and then drops one of the tablets. He says, oh, I mean 10 commandments. But what if there had in fact been other commandments offered at that time? And certainly in the last couple of thousand years, we might have thought of some others. Even our Constitution, our country's most sacred politico-judicial document, has been amended 27 times in only 200 years. Certainly, many commandments and expectations are prescribed throughout the Torah, 613 mitzvot to be exact, and elsewhere in the Talmud, in Pirkei Avot. But none of these made it to the top 10. They did not appear on those tablets. So let's look at some of these others to see which ones we, or in this case mostly I, might have wanted to see added had the commandments been made today and had there been at least a 3rd tablet, or maybe better yet, a PDF document, brought down to the people Israel. Note that many of these, and much of what I say tonight, has been shamelessly borrowed from other people and sources far better equipped to make such judgments than I. I'd like to begin with a caveat. I certainly recognize that we need to consider and appreciate the 10 Commandments, as well as the other rules and prescriptions throughout the Torah and other texts, in the context of the times in which they were written. We have the luxury of a couple of thousand years of hindsight. Still, from our current perspective, what other commandments might we most want to see added to God's top 10? Please know that the list I'm going to share will appear in no special order. They were pretty much added as I found them or that they occurred to me. All right, so now let's look at some of these candidates. It's perhaps surprising that there is little in our texts directly describing our obligations not to harm children, at least in non-lethal ways, or about the need for people generally to be nice, nurturing, and respectful of children. There is little about the duties of parents to meet the needs of their children. So I'd like to start my list of contenders for new commandments with, thou shalt harm no child. Second one, make no man your slave. While the ethical treatment of slaves is discussed in many places in the Torah, wouldn't we today appreciate the simple commandment against the owning of slaves? Number 3, do not judge badly or cause damage to people based on their looks, intelligence, ethnicity, religion, or sexual nature. Treat others as you would want them, as they would want you to treat them. Notice that wording is a little bit different than the Golden Rule. Golden Rule, right, says, as we all learned it, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. But you know, sometimes people don't want the same things that you want. So I like this wording a little better. Basically, do unto others as others would want you to do unto them. Fifth one, treat your fellow human beings, your fellow living things, and the world in general with love, honesty, faithfulness, and respect. Number 6, live life with a sense of joy and wonder. Number 7, enjoy, before I read this one, this is one of several that become more understandable for those who understand what I've done professionally during much of my life. Number 7, enjoy your own sex life, so long as it damages nobody else, and leave others to enjoy theirs in private, whatever their inclinations, which are none of your business. Teach your children how to think for themselves. Do not overlook evil or shrink from administering justice, but always be ready to forgive wrongdoing freely admitted and honestly regretted. In all things, strive to cause no harm. Dedicate a share of your efforts to the greater good. We certainly have no small number of people in this congregation who donate a lot more than a small amount of their efforts to the greater good. Grant every person the right to control their own body. Be mindful of the consequences of all your actions and take full responsibility for them. Leave the world a better place than you found it. Enjoy your life as it is quite likely the only one you'll have. The more vulnerable the other, the greater the necessity to treat them with kindness. Thou shalt not bully. Do not kill non-human animals unless you are attacked or for your food. Number 19, we're up to 19. Keep your promises. Time is precious, spend it wisely. Think for yourself. Be courageous. Do not give opinions or advice unless you are asked. Do not tell your troubles to others unless you're sure they want you to tell them. When you are with others, be with them. In particular, turn off or ignore that darn cell phone. Respect, protect, and guide, particularly the very young and old. Love learning, which is the food of the mind, and be appropriately grateful to your teachers. Do not feel absolutely certain about anything. Be curious and seek the truth. This one was suggested by Rabbi Wenger. I quite like it. The Jewish philosopher Emil Frankenheim added what he termed the 614th commandment. Do not grant Hitler a posthumous victory, meaning we must survive as Jews and we must never forget the martyrs of the Holocaust. Be kind, do good for its own sake, seek peace, practice more than you learn. Another way of saying that, I think, is something we hear often from this pulpit. Pray as if everything depended on God, but always act as if everything depended on you. And finally, yes, there is a finally, if there's a vaccine that will protect you and others from a deadly disease, you shall take it. Clearly, not all of these suggested commandments are equally important, all-encompassing, or even equally likely to be agreed to by all of us. Also, I know we could all come up with other commandments to be added to this list. It was never meant to be exhaustive. And as I said before, many, perhaps most of these, can be found in some form throughout Jewish texts and teachings. But I like the idea of bringing them forth in a simple list like this to see which, if any, might be worth adding to that third tablet that Mel Brooks dropped. Thank you for listening, and Shabbat Shalom.
Kol hakavod. Thank you so much. Words to live by, yes? Professor, I'd love a copy of that list. I bet you a number of us would love a copy of that, if you wouldn't mind sharing sometime. Just fantastic. And so now, a totally different note, the announcements of the week. Well, because you're here, you already know about this, but I'll reiterate it anyway. Join us for in-person Shabbat services in the sanctuary. Of course, our limit is 100 people, and we continue to require proof of vaccination and masking indoors. Please RSVP on the services page. Those are for all of you people out there in internet land watching us. You are welcome to come. Services will also continue as you're seeing them out there on live stream. And in-person Minyan is back, led by yours truly. Although this coming Sunday, Miles Greenberg will be leading in memory of his beloved mom, and so please come and help try to make Minyan with Miles and family. On Sunday, Monday, and Thursday, we're back in person. We are in the beautiful Pepper Chapel. And of course, we also offer access over Zoom. When you attend, once again, provide proof of vaccination. Remember to wear your mask, stay distanced. You'll enter directly into the Pepper Chapel at the northwest part of our building. Member renewal. To renew your membership, receive your High Holy Day tickets, and help ensure Kol Ami's continued fiscal stability, please complete our new member payment agreement and member data form. As a reminder, a minimum payment of 25% of dues, tuition, and fees are required to receive Monday, September 6th. It's also Labor Day. That's fast. Our Kol Ami annual meeting will take place Wednesday, August 11th at 7 p.m. on Zoom. The link to register can be found in the emails sent by our congregation. Agenda and proxy will follow. Interactive virtual event with the American Technion Society, Taking Flight, a look at the science behind the next generation of airplanes, featuring Professor Daniela Rave. Join us for this interactive virtual event in collaboration with the United Jewish Federation of Utah, Temple Har Shalom, and the American Technion Society on Thursday, August 12th, 11 a.m. on Zoom. The link to register, once again, can be found in your emails. The American Technion Society supports the growth and success of this Technion, which is Israel's Institute of Technology, a global innovation powerhouse. This special program will feature how Professor Rave and her team are leading the way in aerospace innovation and are yet another example of how the Technion in Israel has an outsized impact on shaping the technologies of our future. And we have forthcoming our new member and member appreciation Shabbat. Join us Friday, August 13th at 6:30 p.m. for a special Shabbat service and dinner as we welcome our new members. Please RSVP on the services page. And of course, always check your emails for information on recurring programming. And by the way, it wasn't listed on this week's announcement, but we have a wonderful choir and lots of practicing going on for the High Holy Days, taking place on Wednesday evenings and Sunday evenings from 6:30 to 8. If you love to sing, come join us. And I see a hand in the back, Rochelle. Oh my goodness. If you couldn't hear, if there was any trouble hearing, the summation was that we all, of course, should be continuing to mask, especially indoors here at Kol Ami, and that some people are not wearing their masks correctly. Sometimes, unfortunately, these things aren't tight enough. You have to remember to tighten. Many of these things have a ridge where you can put it so it's nice and tight below the eyes and covering the nose. But if you're wearing just a regular paper mask, these things tend to stretch. So carefully check it because it will drop below the nose, especially if you're a singer, trust me. So take great precautions and make sure that you're protecting even though you are vaccinated fully. That variant is out there and we want to make sure we all stay as safe as possible. So thank you so much for bringing it up, just calling your attention to covering the most important breathing apparatuses, the nose and the mouth. And we will continue now with the closing section of our service, which begins with the Kiddush and then Aleinu and Kaddish. I would love for someone who is interested to come to lead us in the Kiddush to come forward. Matan, you want to come forward? Did I see a hand come up? No? That was just a hand up to have a hand up. Does anybody else have desire to come forward and help us in the Kiddush, I can help sing it if you want to hold the Kiddush cup. You don't have to know the whole blessing. You could even just hold the cup if you so desire. Come forward. Excellent, excellent. The Kiddush is found on page 123 in your Siddur. Yes, Rabbi. Dr. Hal Pollack. He has a birthday this weekend. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Would you like to hold the cup? All right.
This is my bar mitzvah.
Oh, wonderful. Please, right into the mic so we can hear you. Feel free to rise if you are so inclined for the Kiddush. Page 123, right here.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvah tov v'rotzavanu v'shabbat kodesho b'yavo uvratzon in hilanu zikaron l'maaseh bereshit ki hu yom tehilo l'mikroei kodesh zecher l'tzion Mitzrayim kivanu v'harta v'yatanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodesha v'yava uvratzon ilhatanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
L'chaim. To life.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. Toda raba. There you go. Toda raba. You may be seated. We are approaching the concluding section of our service. As we said, not only do we make a beautiful Kiddush to continue the sweetness of the Shabbat, but we also talk about our obligations to share as a Jewish people our knowledge, our learning, and the word of God's oneness and God's teachings to the world. And so, even though I just had you be seated, I invite you once again to rise for Aleinu on page 586 as we face the Aharon. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'atei tidula v'yoser breshit, shelo asanu ki goyei haratzon, v'lo samanu ki mishpachot ha'adama, shelo asa Elokeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu v'chol hamunam, v'anachnu koreim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim v'yosed haaretz u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim mima'al u'shir